When you're reading about Warhammer 40K, every now and then you come across something that chills you to the bone, something that just sticks with you and you're not able to stop thinking about it going forward. And maybe it's something really subtle, like a particularly profound line of dialogue that a character said in one of the novels. It's something that you don't think much of at the time, but it just kind of lingers in the back of your mind, forever making you second guess everything that you read going forward. Or maybe it's something so violently grotesque, so utterly grimdark, that after encountering it, you're never the same again. Now, I remember quite vividly this happening to me when I started reading about the demon engines for the first time, but specifically the ones called Heldrakes. And don't you worry, we're going to be getting into them and all their gory details later in the video. Now, at first I was like, oh sweet, dragons, I love dragons, who doesn't? But then you come to find out that not only are they giant murder turkeys, but they're kidnapped space marines in their aircrafts that have the pilot still trapped inside. And then the whole thing is fused with a demon, the pilot literally melting into the machine, and everything gets twisted up into this mechanical abomination that's literally in pain all of the time. And the eternal hatred of both their enemies and the fell sorcerers that curse them are channeled into murderous rampages on the battlefield. Let's just say, dragons were never really the same for me after that. And this is just one example of how crazy demon engines actually are, and there are a metric ton of different types. But for how interesting and grimdark these demonic monstrosities are, personally I feel like they don't get nearly enough attention, as their lore is fascinating. Super dark and disturbing, but fascinating nonetheless. But what exactly is a demon engine? How are they made, and what is their purpose? Are they actually alive, or are they just machines designed to look vaguely organic? How many different types of demon engines are there, and which ones are the most powerful? What's the Dark Mechanicum's role in their creation, and what exactly is a Chaos Space Marine warpsmith, as they seem to be intrinsically tied to the demon engines? Well, in this video, we're going to be diving into all that and a whole lot more, as there's a lot to talk about. Needless to say, we're going to be getting a little bit heretical with this one, so grab your purity seals and get comfortable as we dive headfirst into the grimdark. But before we get into all that, I'm going to tell you about this massive new addition that's coming to Warhammer 40,000 Tacticus, the sponsor of this video. Now if you know me, you know I'm a big fan of this game. I love being able to get my Warhammer fix anytime, anywhere. But if I'm being honest with you, the one thing I always felt was missing from the game was some of those bigger, more threatening units that can be found in the tabletop. Well, apparently the developers agreed with me, as they're introducing a new event dubbed the Machines of War, which introduces a new 6th unit to the battlefield. The first 3 they've shown off so far are the Malleus rocket launcher field ordnance battery for the Astra Militarum, the ForgeFiends Demon Engine for the Black Legion, and the Biovore artillery organism for the Tyranids. I'm wicked excited to see how these dudes are going to shake up the meta, and on a personal note, the ForgeFiend has always been one of my favorite Warhammer units. And just look at this thing, it's a demonic mechanical dinosaur with guns for hands. What's not to love? Mark your calendars, because the first Machines of War event is going to be starting on June 10th. So now is the perfect time for new players to get into Tacticus and for veterans to come back to the game. From what I've been told, this is going to be a recurring event in the future, with each new Machines of War event bringing more exciting units to the lineup. Click on my link in the description of this video to download Warhammer 40,000 Tacticus for free today. And whether you're a newcomer or a veteran, make sure to use my code WesMOW5 to get some awesome free rewards. Big thanks to Warhammer 40,000 Tacticus for sponsoring this video. Within the seemingly infinite arsenal of blasphemous technology utilized by the Chaos Space Marines, there exists a host of terrifying war engines, whose very existence spits directly in the face of the laws that govern reality. I speak of course of the demon engines, an unholy fusion of sorcery and technology, and a twisted mockery of the sacred machine form. These demonic killing machines stalk the battlefields on planets across the galaxy, slaughtering everything in their path. They are the unfettered power of the warp made manifest, and the consequences wrought from the pursuit of knowledge with little regard for consequence. Unlike the machines utilized by the Imperium, demon engines do not have a crew. In fact, many consider them to be living, breathing entities, fully sentient and harboring a wicked capacity for limitless cruelty. Each is formed by fusing a captured and bound demon pulled kicking and screaming from the warp inside of a mechanical construct. As demons are creatures of the immaterium, they cannot exist within the physical universe without a body to inhabit, Thus, the engine they are bound to acts as a vessel for them to walk the stars, demon and machine gradually fusing together in a dark metamorphosis. They are towering beasts of living metal, driven not by technology but diabolic machine lore. And they come in a lot of different forms, from tracked behemoths and scuttling predators to towering giants that carry a fearsome array of death-dealing implements. From massive crushing claws and writhing mechadendrites to cannons that could level a city with a single shot. For the demon inside, life is torturous. To become a demon engine was never their choice, rather it was the will of the summoners, who view them as little more than glorified demonic batteries. You have to understand that demons hold the inhabitants of our universe as primitive and flawed creatures. To be enslaved by such lesser beings is the highest and most severe of insults. Further, their mechanical prisons that they are bound to are often designed to torture the enslaved spirit, driving them into insanity until all that is left of their personality is a maddened desire for slaughter. It is at this point that they will be loosed onto the battlefields, channeling their eternal hatred into an orgy of violence and rampant bloodshed. To the cult Mechanicus, the demon engines exist as the ultimate blasphemy. Everything about them spits directly in the face of the teachings of the machine god. Yet the dark Mechanicum views them as the ultimate expression of mankind's potential. They have broken free of the corpse worshippers' endless dogmatic limitations and embraced the truth of reality. Through the application of forbidden lore and the heretical practice of innovation, they have created some of the deadliest war engines the galaxy has ever seen. The history of the demon engines themselves is somewhat shrouded in mystery. Although we as the audience have direct evidence of them being utilized as early as the Horus Heresy, most of the in-universe records and documents from these times have either been lost or purged. So when reading about demon engines, we often see conflicting dates on when certain patterns were first encountered. No matter what form they take, all demon engines are creatures driven by unreasoning hatred for the material universe, and seek only to shed the blood of its mortal inhabitants. These things are incredibly dangerous, not just to the forces of the Imperium, but also their controllers as well. Most have to be restrained when not in use via heavy warded chains and a never-ending supply of blood sacrifices, lest they turn against their controllers in an orgy of violence and bloodshed. Despite the extensive list of known demon engines and the potential for thousands more that have gone yet undocumented, the Inquisition has managed to categorize them into 4 distinct categories, based on the research conducted and compiled by Inquisitor Verley Roth in a document titled the Machina Daemonica. These categories include the Infernal Engine, the Possessed Engine, the Demon Engine, and the Manifest or Incarnate Demon Engine. This video is mostly going to be focused on that third category, but it's important to know about all 4 of these as people tend to get them confused. Anyways, the Infernal Engines are considered to be the lowest tier of entities that we could classify as a demon engine. These are traditionally vehicles that utilize a crew, and although were originally created by the Imperium, now serve the forces of chaos instead. These are going to be the demon engines that still resemble a vehicle. So anything that's labeled as a chaos version of something. Your chaos predators, chaos vindicators, chaos land raiders, etc., etc. It is the Inquisition's belief that the machine spirit at the core of these engines has become so utterly mutated via chaos corruption that they can't even really be considered a machine spirit anymore. And most of the time, they refer to them as a demon spirit, even though they're not quite literally a demon plucked from the warp like with other demon engines. Although machine spirits themselves have been shown to be sentient, the more powerful the machine, the more powerful its spirit, and they maintain some degree of control over their mechanical forms. These demon spirits are said to be significantly more aware than a standard machine spirit. They have been frequently shown to be able to override the will of their controllers for their own fell purposes. This means that even if the pilot of, say, a Chaos Land Raider ends up getting killed in battle, the demon spirit within cares not, and will continue to fight on, relishing in its newfound freedom from the agenda of mortal men, and instead pursuing the singular goal of destruction to order and harmony. Although level of mutation and corruption to the vehicle itself will change from specimen to specimen, for the most part, you can think of Infernal engines as still looking and acting like their Imperial counterparts, just with more spikes and trophy racks. Ironically, the Inquisitor that wrote this report goes on to state that she has witnessed many Astartes chapters diligently recording the grotesque names of all of these engines, noting their sins and crimes against the chapter from battle to battle. Often the Space Marines will have powerful vendettas against such infernal engines and will hunt them down with the same fervor that they have against heretic Astartes. The infernal engines that were specifically originally part of their chapter turning to the ruinous powers being reviled in exactly the same way as their own fallen brothers. Now, although I mentioned before that the infernal engines don't literally have a demon sealed within, even though their machine spirits are called demon spirits, in this next category, the possessed engines, we actually start to see real demons being utilized in their creation. Now, in order to create one of these things, the heretics that would induce the rites of summoning and bonding must pay a toll in flesh and blood and souls taken from innocent victims. The payment required escalating depending upon the power of the demon utilized in the possessed engine's creation. Now, the second price comes afterwards, because normally the demon is not a willing participant, or they were at first, but realized too late that they were being tricked. They were trapped in a prison of warded iron and steel. After the battle is done and the enemies of the summoner have been slaughtered, it is quite common for these machines to turn their guns against their creators. There have been many documented accounts of possessed engines such as land raiders devouring their own crews, or Storm Eagle assault gunships unleashing their hatred in a furious salvo of twin-linked bolter fire into the ranks of their own allies. For clarity's sake, these are still going to be demon engines that resemble machines that we're familiar with, but with a lot more chaos corruption on top of them. This is where we start to see tanks that have big bulbous eyes and flailing tentacles coming out of their hulls. The third tier is where we get to what can actually be considered a true demon engine. And what makes them stand apart from the rest is that these mechanical monstrosities don't have an Imperial counterpart. You're not going to see a non-corrupted Space Marine ForgeFiend or Defiler, for example. Instead, the techno-sorcery used in their construction was done so specifically to house a bound demon. This kind of demon engine is super easy to identify, as it's the things that look vaguely organic. Your ForgeFiends, Venomcrawlers, Heldrakes, Blood Slaughterers, etc., etc. The binding of a demon with a machine in a true demon engine goes much further than simply being plugged in like a spiritual battery in the case of a possessed engine. The fusion is so complete that the demon's soul will slowly begin to take over and worm its way through the mechanical jail, the demon asserting what is left of its will over the metal that binds it to the physical universe. The defiled hull will pulse and distort to better resemble the core essence of its captive. Iron and steel will convert to flesh and bone, tangled cabling twisting into demonic circulatory and nervous systems, undulants and fuels gradually taking on a form that can best be described as demonic blood and other bodily fluids, as mechanical and demonic essence further blend in an unholy metamorphosis. The final tier of demon engine is by far the most rare, and whereas an infernal engine is simply a machine and not actually a demon at all, a manifest demon engine is a full-blown demon, just one that kinda vaguely resembles a war machine. And these things come in a wide variety of shapes, sizes, and power levels, from the machine-like mounts utilized by demons like the Blood Thrones, Skull Cannons, or Discs of Tzeentch, to the mid-sized war engines like Brass Scorpions, Soul Grinders, and Plague Hulks, all the way up to titanic entities such as the Silver Towers of Tzeentch. Anyways, incarnate demon engines are shaped from the raw stuff of the warp, either by powerful demonic entities, their patron god, or an exceptionally skilled warpsmith that would be considered the apex of their class. Whereas demon engines are a fusion of demon and machine, the manifest demon engines are constantly shifting between these two states, their essence flickering between metal and demon flesh while being neither and both simultaneously. Because no actual mortal machine or any component born of the physical universe is used in their creation, they follow the same rules that other demons do. They can be summoned into existence by powerful chaos sorcerers, and when they're destroyed in battle, they leave nothing behind. They dematerialize and their soul is sent shrieking back into the warp. With regular demon engines, the captured demonic soul within is released when they're killed, but its frame will stay where it fell. Okay, so just to recap, infernal engines are simply chaos-tainted war machines. Possessed engines are vehicles that do have a demon bound inside of them, but they were never designed for this, and it's normally done impulsively with little preparation. Actual demon engines are considered the perfect symbiosis of the physical and immaterial universes, a successful union of demon, man, and machine. And manifest or incarnate demon engines are demons that resemble machines but are born entirely in the immaterium. Inquisitor Veerly Roth's report spoke of how demon engines were originally thought by the Imperium to be isolated one-off examples, the work of a small handful of heretic tech priests, yet over time certain patterns began to develop. They started seeing demon engines such as the Defilers, ForgeFiends, and MaulerFiends appearing in mass on battlefields across the galaxy, indicating that the arch-enemy had unlocked the means of mass-producing them. Even more troubling was the after-action reports that indicated that as more and more of them kept popping up, the defenders of the Imperium were starting to notice signature aesthetics of demon engines clearly wrought from specific Helforges. A defiler produced by the Dark Magi in the Helforge of Sarum, for example, was markedly different from the ones created by the heretics of Junkata. The idea that a single Helforge was capable of producing these things en masse was bad enough. But the knowledge that such techniques were spreading from forge to forge at an exponential rate was indicative of a cataclysmic event. When it comes to how these things are made, there isn't exactly a perfectly defined template for all of them. Chaos by its nature is chaotic, and for every hard and fast rule we think that we have, we encounter 10 more in the lore that break what we previously considered to be fundamental truths. And that being said, outliers and strange operations aside, the core of demon engine production remains relatively the same in Helforges across the galaxy and throughout the Eye of Terror. It is what is considered a threefold blasphemy, wherein three diametrically opposed heretics must combine their unique skill sets in order to bring them into existence through what is known as the Ritual of Binding. The individuals in question being a Chaos Sorcerer, a Dark Apostle, and a Warpsmith, or a skilled magus of the Dark Mechanicum. This is the unholy trifecta of sorcery, heretical technology, and faith in the ruinous powers, all coming together in a forbidden unity to manifest something never intended to exist within our universe. So let's go through the process step by step. Now, the first part of the Ritual of Binding will be inducted by the Sorcerer, whose job is to conjure a portal between the physical and immaterial universes, creating a bridge for which a demon will be able to be contacted and through which it may cross over into our reality. Next up is the Dark Apostle, who will court the demon to cross over. The moment they have a demon's attention, they will invoke the Dark Gods through an unholy litany and bind the demon to their will, dragging it kicking and screaming into the hungering maw of the Soul Forge. Once the demon has been successfully bound and is in position, it falls to the Warpsmith or the Dark Magi to finish the job. It is they who provide the mechanical shell to which the demon will be sealed inside, as well as any living victims or blood offerings that will be used in the binding ritual. Once the demon is inside of the machine and its essence begins to permeate throughout its new body, the Warpsmith will seal the engine shut and reinforce those bonds tighter with a series of warding chains to ensure that the enraged demon is unable to escape. It should go without saying that this is an incredibly dangerous process and a lot can go wrong. The sorcerer's spell could go haywire, and the portal could end up acting like a black hole, sucking all of them directly into the warp itself, where their souls will be feasted upon by the demons they sought to control for thousands of years. The Dark Apostle could get a phrase in his litany wrong, or worse, the gods may reject their request, causing them to lose control of the captured demon who will then attempt to possess them. Or maybe the Warpsmith wasn't able to successfully finish binding the new demon engine. And without those wards and chains in place, the machine will become enraged at the great insult it has suffered, causing it to rip and tear its way through the Hellforge, doing incalculable damage. Although each of the individuals in the previous scenario play an equally important role in the creation of a new demon engine, the Warpsmith without question is the one most commonly associated with them throughout 40K's lore. So let's talk a bit more about what they're all about. At their core, a Warpsmith is a Chaos Space Marine possessed of utterly heretical knowledge pertaining to the dark arts of techno-arcana and demon-smithing. You can think of them like the Chaos equivalent of a Tech Marine, and in truth, many of them may have started out as a member of that order, before later spitting on their oaths and embracing the ruinous powers. But whereas a tech marine is firmly embedded in the beliefs of the cult Mechanicus and holds machines and their associated machine spirits in high reverence, the warpsmiths recognize no such limitation to their work. Whereas a tech marine placates a machine spirit into cooperation through calming litanies and mutual respect, a warpsmith dominates them through pain and suffering. Instead of worshipping and revering technology, a warpsmith strives to corrupt and subjugate it. Although each warpsmith is a unique individual with their own history, story, beliefs, and ambitions, it is a commonly held ideology within their ranks that mankind's ambition is limited by his mortal nature. Thus, they have embraced the use of bionics and other more devious enhancements to rid themselves of the frailties of flesh. Most of them at this point are little more than a brain and a spinal cord sealed within inside a cybernetic suit of armor. And their upgrades don't stop there. Many also sport numerous mechadendrils tipped with grasping pincer claws, shearing chain blades, fusion blasters, or other vicious weapons that writhe with unnatural life. The way they see things, demons are immortal beings of immense power, yet lack a true form. Machines, though physically indomitable, are all but inert, and mankind, though in possession of limitless ambition, is held back by his innate frailty. Man, demon, and machine, flesh, spirit, and steel. By fusing them together through the process of mechamorphosis, the strengths of the three are magnified 100-fold, their weaknesses eradicated. The warpsmith's ultimate goal is to forever seek out new forbidden forms of tech lore and fuse them together to create all manner of blasphemous machine hybrids, each more deranged and unthinkably deadly than the last. It's little wonder that out of all of the Chaos Space Marines that exist, the Mechanicus has the most profound loathing for these guys in particular, as everything about them spits directly in the face of the machine cult's ancient edicts and dogmatic creeds. When they come face to face on the battlefield, it is inevitable that titanic energies will be released by both sides in an effort to destroy the other. Within a Chaos Warband, it is the Warpsmith's primary function to maintain and see over all of the Warband's technology, from their warp-tainted bolters all the way up to the plasma drives on their titanic void ships. Each and every one of them is a master in battlefield repair, siegecraft, and is an accomplished warrior in their own right. But it is off the battlefield within the Helforges where their grim skill set is most earnestly applied. Now, I should make a note here that although warpsmiths are what are most commonly associated with the creation of demon engines, as they're both playable models within the Chaos Space Marine faction in the 40K tabletop game, in reality it is the Dark Mechanicum that is the true masters of demon smithing, as it is they who are the keepers of the forbidden lore that detail their creation. Most warpsmiths have strong ties to the Dark Mechanicum, and most have spent at least some time studying underneath their heretic magi. I'll just let you know now that I've been working on a Dark Mechanicum deep dive video on and off for the last couple of months, and I'll be exploring that faction in a lot more depth in that video, whenever I get around to releasing it. So in this one, I'm going to keep it brief and just focus on the aspects that pertain to the demon engines directly, namely the Helforges. But before we get into that, I feel like we should establish some terminology real quick that can be confusing to newcomers and veterans alike. And that includes myself, I'll freely admit that. I didn't fully understand the differences between these things until I started doing research for this video. But okay, let's get into it. A Helforge is a forge world controlled by the Dark Mechanicum, which are entire planets dominated by a vast labyrinthian industrial complex comprised of forges, manufactorums, and foundries dedicated to the production of weapons, armaments, and war engines for the armies of chaos. Much like the Imperial Forge worlds, Helforges are absolutely massive, and they're not just a single forge. Sometimes they're made up of hundreds or thousands of different forges, all ruled over by different forge masters with their own specialties. Now, a soul forge is a specific type of forge where demon engines are produced, and the Forge of Souls is a demonic forge that exists within the realm of chaos and is ruled over by Vashtor the Archiphane, a greater demon of chaos undivided who is often considered to be a lesser deity of machines. Helforges are traditionally actual planets, thus they exist either in the physical universe or the Eye of Terror, but the Forge of Souls exist in the Immaterium, meaning the damned souls that occupy it are either demons who have entered into a contract with Vashtor, or captured and tortured souls enslaved to the will of powerful warp entities. Now, whereas the first three types of demon engine, infernal, possessed, and actual demon engines are made within Helforges, the incarnate demon engines can trace their origins back to the Forge of Souls. Soul forges on a Helforge can be absolutely massive, some of them said to be the size of an entire city, and they all radiate with the infernal heat of the warp. It is here that the Dark Magi revel in limitless blasphemy and sacrifice countless thousands of living victims in the pursuit of diabolical research. These places also serve as something of an institution for forbidden machine lore of every origin, be it demonic, Xenos, or secrets pulled from the Dark Age of technology. Now, unlike their Mechanicus counterparts, the fallen tech priests of the Dark Mechanicum view innovation and experimentation as a valuable tool that can be used to further explore their dreadful theories and concepts. Suffering is merely a statistic to these callous individuals, registered only as a variation in biological rhythms. Their dark and twisted trials are conducted without thought of morality or consideration for their effects on the world around them. Much like their loyalist cousins, they value knowledge above all else, but the imperial idea that some knowledge shouldn't be pursued or should be forbidden is anathema to them. It doesn't matter how dark, evil, twisted, or forbidden said knowledge may be. And because of this, the Helforges are most commonly associated with demon engines, even though this is not all they produce. These are massive centers of infernal industry where mills grind flesh and suffering into currency, used to make the insane visions of the Dark Mechanicum a reality. They enslave the populations of entire worlds to endlessly churn out weapons, armaments, and demon engines that they can barter with, most often trading their wares and services to the warbands of the Chaos Space Marines that are willing to pay the most, normally payment coming in the form of a fresh supply of new slaves or insight into the location of lost technology. No two Helforges are exactly the same, and they come in a wide array of different forms. Some are fallen Imperial Forge worlds taken as the spoils of war. Some exist on demonic worlds, their forges having been twisted by chaotic corruption into unrecognizable hellscapes. Sometimes they exist on hollowed-out asteroids, moons, or planetoids, or sometimes they may even be hidden in plain sight, such as the infamous example, and I'm gonna butcher this name, so be ready for that, Abheilung, an imperial planet that, unknown to the settlers, housed an enormous hellforge deep beneath its surface that went undiscovered for centuries. As the population grew steadily larger up above, the hidden heretics below bided their time, monitoring its development like a farmer monitors the ripeness of his crops. When the time came and the populace had sufficiently ripened, the Dark Mechanicum caused all of the planet's dormant volcanoes to erupt in a cataclysmic cascade, causing wide-scale destruction and panic. Then, from the volcanic craters came hordes of demon engines, which wiped out all human life in less than a month. The collected energy wrought from suffering on a planet-wide scale. The countless bodies of the slain and the plethora of captured slaves were all subsequently taken deep underground into the Helforge's volcanic chambers and used to make hordes of new demon engines. Now, as we mentioned before, demon engines come in all shapes and sizes, each and every one having its own distinct personality and battlefield application. So in the next section, let's examine some of the more prominent demon engines used by all of the Chaos forces, namely the ones that we would consider to be Chaos Undivided, that have been seen within armies of every single one of the different Chaos Space Marine factions at one point or another. I'm gonna go ahead and save the God-specific demon engines for their own video later on, and I'm also gonna leave out the Infernal engines, Possessed engines, and Manifest demon engines, as although they're commonly referred to as demon engines, they don't technically meet the criteria to be considered one. So no Chaos Rhinos, Chaos Land Raiders, Chaos Titans, Soul Grinders, or Plague Hulks here. I promise we'll talk about all of them in another video. But anyways, let's start this off with my personal favorite demon engine, the Heldrakes. Now, these guys are a very popular type of demon engine that is rendered into the shape of a dragon, pulled directly from the myths of old Earth. They're incredibly efficient airborne predators and thus have been utilized by every legion of Chaos Space Marines at one point in time. Normally, they're equipped with a single balefire thrower that is located in their mouths and used to incinerate hordes of enemy infantry. However, their true strength is derived from their melee weaponry, namely razor-sharp adamantium jaws, talons, and slicing wings that are used to rip apart enemy aircrafts. The warbands that utilize these guys tend to have them launch the opening strike against their enemy, and they're not commonly stored within their ships. Instead, they cling to the underside of void-born vessels in their hundreds of thousands, hanging upside down by their feet with their armored wings wrapped protectively around their form. And once the ship enters low orbit and they catch a whiff of the prey below, all of the Heldrakes will be unleashed at the same time, descending to the battlefield like a flock of frenzied raptors, screaming with savage joy at the slaughter to come. They're kind of an ingenious version of anti-aircraft, as instead of utilizing anti-air munitions like other Chaos War engines, their entire body has been constructed with the specific purpose of hunting down enemy flyers. They are like a bird of prey that will dive in from above like a living comet, before pouncing and eviscerating an aircraft. Some planes are simply sliced in half by their wings as the Heldrake goes screaming past, whereas others are torn apart via thrashing jaws and piston-driven talons. After the kill is made, the prey's broken, flaming wreck will be cast to the ground below as the Heldrake leaps back into the sky in search of more victims. What makes them so particularly grimdark is the way in which they are made, as after-action reports from people who have fought against them say that they can't quite put the finger on it, but they seem to radiate a deep sense of wrongness. And this is because the vast majority of the Heldrakes began life as captured Space Marine aircrafts that still had their pilots inside when the Warpsmiths began the process of converting them into a demon engine. After the ritual was complete, the pilot would be fused to the cockpit as the demon's influence wormed its way through the aircraft, twisting and converting its metal frame into something better suited to its malign spirit. The pilot's body would atrophy, fusing more completely with the aircraft until what remained of their physical form was little more than a pulsating pile of meat, their organs and innards strung about through the interior and merged with the regulatory systems of their steed. Their eyes would melt from their sockets, replaced with vision pulled directly from all of the vehicle's sensor feeds. The nerve endings of their skin would now instead be connected to the Heldrake's frame, allowing them to feel the wind against their hull and every agonizing wound inflicted in battle. The human, demon, and machine spirits would fuse together into a twisted and tortured amalgamation, causing their trauma and rage to be magnified and blasted out of their vox arrays in a haunting cry of pain, suffering, and eternal hatred. Whereas the Heldrakes are incredibly nimble airborne killing machines that have limited range weaponry, the ForgeFiends, on the other hand, are the Chaos equivalent to a long-range weapon platform, each capable of raining down the undiluted power of the warp directly into the ranks of all those that would stand against them. Long-range support fire is a battlefield role that they fill incredibly well, as their entire body is designed in such a way to maximize the devastating impact of their firearms. All of the ForgeFiends are equipped with 3 weapon mounting points, one on each arm and another in their mouths. The most common variant utilizes an array of Hades autocannons, while more rare variants wield what are known as ectoplasma cannons. The Hades autocannons are rotary gun clusters that are capable of scything down masses of enemy infantry as well as lightly armored vehicles with relative ease, whereas the ectoplasma cannons are said to be relics from the days of the Horus heresy that have been twisted into something far more devastating by the most insane of warpsmiths. These terrifying cannons are capable of hurling a unique hybrid of both plasma and burning ectoplasm channeled straight from the ForgeFiend's tainted heart that is capable of burning through even the heaviest of armor. Once they locate their target, they will open their etheric valves and draw forth the unreal power of the immaterium, channeling it into either bouts of ghostly plasma or through hellish volleys of infernal shells, every shot causing reality to pulse and flicker as these esoteric energies are lanced towards the foe. Anything unlucky enough to get caught in the crossfire of one of these things will erupt under the raw power of the abyss. Most foolish individuals that face these things in battle assume that if they can get in close, they will be defenseless. Those who would attempt such a thing will end up being torn apart by the invisible claws of unseen demons, their souls rended from their body and then dragged into the warp. Now, the MaulerFiends are very similar to ForgeFiends, but they fill a different combat role. They ditch the heavy long-range weapons of their cousins and instead are equipped with enormous claws, thrashing metallic appendages, and brutal close-range magma cutters that are capable of melting through even the thickest of fortifications. It's not like any single demon engine is known for having a particularly agreeable personality, but the MaulerFiends are noted for being particularly ill-tempered. They are like a living, rage-filled wrecking ball that lopes across the battlefield in a thunderous charge, ectoplasmic drool drizzling from their fanged maws, the scent of prey fresh on their olfactory vents. Any infantry unlucky enough to get caught in their way will either be scissored apart with a flex of their massive talons or simply crushed into a red smear beneath their feet. These things are specifically designed for smashing their way through the enemy ranks in order to barrel into tanks and other heavy vehicles. But they also serve the purpose of cracking open enemy fortifications in order to feast on the terrified souls within, making them very popular with the Iron Warriors. Nowhere is safe from a MaulerFiend, as despite their huge size, they have been shown to be incredibly agile and have been documented scaling sheer surfaces. Now, the Venomcrawlers, on the other hand, are scuttling spider-like demon engines that have the terrifying ability to sense fear in a manner akin to how a shark tracks blood in the open ocean. Once prey is detected, they will lock onto their location, emit an ear-splitting screech, and unleash pent-up warp energy through their excruciator cannons in a volley of solid shot that rips through hordes of heavily armored infantry with ease. If their prey is protected within a vehicle, they will close in and use their eviscerating claws to rip it open. Once their prey is exposed, they will activate their soul flare tendrils that lash about in a frenzied razor-sharp storm that both mangles bodies and strips them of their souls. Afterwards, the Venomcrawler will greedily draw in the discarded spiritual energy into its vast mechanical abdomen for later use. Although the methods used to create a Venomcrawler are similar to those of other demon engines, they differ in one interesting way. You see, the ritual utilized in their creation doesn't use a singular demon, but instead uses a whole bunch of them. Now, after the portal has been opened in the ritual, the Venomcrawler chassis acts like a heretical lure that entices lesser parasitic entities to investigate. It's kinda like how a crab trap works. You've got a big cage with bait inside that has a one-way door that will let them in but won't let them back out. Now, after the trap is full, the enraged and panicked lesser demons will frantically begin to lash about, desperately attempting to escape. In their confusion and rage, they will begin to turn on one another in an orgy of violence. As they are killed one by one, the Venomcrawler's warded hull will keep the energy trapped within, gradually generating a huge reservoir of warp energy that causes the demon engine's abdomen to distend and inflate. When there is but a single demon left, and normally the largest and strongest of the bunch, it will then be bound to the Venomcrawler in a state of inseparable symbiosis, while the captured essence of all of the killed demons will be used as a power reservoir for future battles. Now, aside from their combat application as a deadly little war engine, the Venomcrawlers serve two additional purposes to the armies of chaos. The first is that since they're in essence a cannibalistic demon that thrives on consuming its own kin, they are used to hunt down demons that manage to escape the rituals of the warpsmiths. They lurk in the depths of a Hellforge, and the moment they sense the essence of an escaped demon, they will burst from their hiding holes and ruthlessly pursue them, devouring the raging spirit and then storing their essence within their bulbous bodies. If they're not continuously fed a supply of new demon souls, then in their hunger, they will turn to other sources of warp energy, often consuming possessed space marines, demonkin, chaos sorcerers, or warp-tainted heretic Astartes. The other useful purpose that they serve is that they're basically just walking warp energy reservoirs that can be utilized by sorcerers or summoners on the battlefield. They're basically big spider-shaped rechargeable batteries. Now, oftentimes a master of possession will use the energy stored within one of these guys to summon a vast horde of lesser demons like bloodletters or plague bearers. And then when the battle is over, the Venomcrawler will devour said demons, recycling their energy and once again storing it for later use. Next up is the Helstalkers, and they're a relatively new type of demon engine that are exclusively used as mounts for Chaos Space Marine Lord Discordance, which you can think of like a mixture between a Chaos Lord and a Warpsmith, an incredibly powerful and influential leader figure with such a strong mastery over machines and techno-arcana that through spoken blasphemous litanies, they can cause all of the machinery in an area to glitch and seize. When it comes to the Helstalkers themselves, they are specifically created to hunt down enemy war engines. They use their strong prying limbs and magma cutters to slice open vehicles, and then their hypno-armor syringes will forcefully inject demonic dataphages and chaotic scrap code directly into the machine's circuitry, causing them to go haywire and the machine spirit within to spasm with inhuman suffering. The machine will struggle to reroute vital functions and maintain its system integrity as the Helstalker gorges itself on its mechanical misery. Machines in Warhammer 40K are powered by this thing known as the motive force. It is the invisible energy that gives life to the inanimate, and although concepts like this in 40K don't directly channel into real-world things, you can think of this like electricity. And that is specifically what the Helstalker is after, its motive force. It's like a gargantuan mosquito that, instead of sucking blood from its victim, gorges itself on motive force, code, and subroutines. The Helstalker can use this captured energy to heal any wounds that it may have sustained, causing warp-tainted steel to mend like sundered flesh, albeit at a vastly accelerated rate. But that's not all. The stolen energy can be used not only to heal, but also to destroy, as it can be released as a screaming beam of concentrated and corrupted motive force that infects the systems of any enemy vehicles that it hits. Now, the last demon engine I want to talk about is one that has a special place in my heart because when I got into Warhammer way back in like 2002, 2003, this was single-handedly like the largest model that was in the tabletop game, save anything from Forge World. I remember fighting against these guys and being absolutely blown away by something that could be this big and terrifying, fighting against my Tyranid army at the time, as the largest thing I had was a Carnifex. Nowadays, the Defiler isn't nearly as impressive as it was to 14-year-old me, but I still love these things. Now anyways, Defilers are massive multi-limbed walkers that resemble a giant demonic crab. Now, despite their unorthodox appearance and huge size, they're able to scuttle across the battlefield with unholy speed, laying down devastating heavy weapons fire, and then when they close in on their target, ripping them apart with their huge crushing claws. Now, they were at first considered to be relatively rare, having been created for Abaddon's first Black Crusade. But recently, they've been showing up at exponential rates on battlefields across the galaxy, being utilized by every single one of the Chaos Legions to varying degrees. Thus, they are believed to be one of the first mass-produced demon engines. And due to the Dark Mechanicum's extensive experience in crafting these things, there are all kinds of different variants and different weapon loadouts for these guys. In addition to their vast arsenals, the Chaos Defilers are said to be some of the toughest and hardest to bring down of all demon engines, save for some Nurgle-specific variants. They're able to shrug off wounds that would incapacitate more conventional war machines, and on many occasions, they've been seen utterly shredded to pieces, yet still pursuing their enemies, all but one of their legs crippled and dragging behind them as a single claw is used to drag its impotent body across the battlefield in a desperate desire for one more kill. No matter the variation in design, all Defilers share a few similar characteristics, such as 6 powerful articulated limbs, a pair of massive crushing claws, and a mobile chassis equipped with a large armored turret reminiscent of an Imperial battle cannon. These things are very difficult to control on the battlefield, and will oftentimes be released without being given too many specific instructions other than to break through the enemy ranks and cause chaos. They exist only to sow destruction and to create carnage. Off the battlefield, they must be routinely satiated through blood offerings to keep them at least somewhat under control. If this isn't done at regular intervals, then they'll go absolutely berserk and lash out at their creators. And with all that said, what do you think of all this? What's your favorite type of demon engine and why? Is it one of the ones that we covered in this video or a god-specific one that we didn't? For me personally, I can't decide if I like the Heldrakes more or the ForgeFiends. The Heldrakes lore is awesome and dripping with over-the-top 40k grim darkness, but I just love the design of the ForgeFiends. I mean, just look at these guys. They're like demonic mechanical T-Rexes with guns for hands. It's perfection. But like I said earlier, I've also got this nostalgia for the Defilers, so I just can't decide. What are your thoughts on the Dark Mechanicum becoming a playable faction in the 40k tabletop game, and thus resulting in a huge influx of new lore for them? I think the Dark Mechanicum is easily one of my favorite factions in all of 40k, and I'd love to see a period where they get to be in the spotlight. I'll admit they do show up in a lot of chaos-centric books, but they're normally just side characters. I don't think we've ever received a single novel written from their perspective, which is a damn shame. If you were to create your own demon engine, what would it look like and why? Would it be a demonic equivalent of a vehicle that exists in-universe, or something totally out there? What do you think a demon engine derived from a Xenos vehicle would look like? Let me know all of your thoughts, comments, and corrections down in the comment section below. And if you like videos like this, don't forget to subscribe to the channel and ring the bell to be notified when I post another lore video. Anyways, with all that said, big thanks to everyone that supports the work that I do, and I'll catch you all in the next one.